everybody. This is your host, Sweet Tea, and this is another episode of the Catch the Sky podcast. Thank you for tuning in. As always, you can interact with us on Twitter at CTSTerry or by searching for the Catch the Sky podcast on Facebook. In this episode, you will be hearing me refer to a lot of content over the previous weekend. That would be the weekend of May 30th and 31st, 2020, just to give everybody a frame of reference. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, all right, here, we're good. We're live.
We are live. Here we go. It's official.
It's official.
I was just watching bird watchers get harassed in Central Park. And then all hell broke loose the country. So what I like to do is I have news. Like, I read news like, oh, what was it like before 9/11? I just start reading newspapers September 10th, 2001 and before.
Yeah.
With like Minnesota thing. So before this guy got the WWE neck hold put on him.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lady in Central Park, New York, very progressive, very liberal place, and she's calling the police on black people. So this is nothing new. This is a Karen, a Betty, Barbecue Betty.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, and now all hell's broken loose. You got tear gas last night. I want to start talking about all this.
Okay, yeah, we can start wherever. The whole thing, yeah. I mean, the long and the simplest way I've had to put it, and people like to, try and disassemble this argument, but it's just the simplest way to put it. The time for peaceful protest and the time for talking is gone. They wasted that opportunity, and it's actually infuriating to hear people say that anything that's going on around the country is an embarrassment or that they should be doing anything else, because guess what? They tried taking a knee during the anthem to get your attention, and you made it about the flag. So shut your goddamn mouth. Shut it. Just shut the fuck up, because it wasn't about the flag. He even said so. You asked him what it was about. He showed you his fucking socks, and you fucking threw a fit about it. So shut up. He wore socks. He wore socks, and they threw a fit. He wore socks, and they threw a fit. So what's going to make the white people happy? Nothing. The only thing that's going to make the white man happy is the continual oppression of the black man. Okay, that seems to be the only thing that I can disseminate from all of this.
Poor people, just poor people in general.
Poor people.
They like black culture. They like LeBron James and Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah, they love it.
They love the music, right? They love the dancing.
But they don't like the people. That's interesting.
They don't like the people, and this is an American thing too. I want to be fair to America here. I don't want people to think, oh, these guys are just trashing on American white people. Black people are hated universally. So this has been their racists in Europe. They're pretty adamant at soccer games. They're doing Nazi salutes. This idea of nationalism is nothing new. It's an idea that continues to survive. We're in this era where Twitter now is trying to fact check our leaders, even though they used to give them a free pass. And the argument is, in the marketplace of ideas, all ideas should be welcome. So anybody should be able to say anything, including white power, white nationalists, right? But what I don't understand is that this idea keeps winning or keeps living. I've been taught that World War II was not a good thing and Nazis were bad, yet somehow this idea of oppression of minorities, racial minorities, throw the Jews in there too, and we still don't like anybody who's not and I don't know if it's fair to say, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
It's bizarre.
You're an Anglo. You have blue eyes.
Yeah, I grew up Catholic though, but
we don't like the Catholics either, so
yeah, nobody likes
they
anybody.
killed the only president.
I think Which is interesting. There has never been another Catholic president since.
Well, they learned their lesson, didn't they?
It's crazy, man.
Just stick to the Knights of Columbus, get your holiday, Columbus Day, celebrated, and play bocce, eat cannolis. And
I think part of what you mentioned, though, in your previous statement is what the issue is we allow free speech in this country, which permits an open forum for hate speech. So it's a double-edged sword. What do you want? You know, I hate you know what I hate to say that, like, we shouldn't allow, you know, that kind of thing to permeate in this country, but I mean, what was the civil rights movement all about?
Right. But is it about, I don't think the civil rights movement was about censorship of speech.
Oh, no.
Because we want all ideas.
You know what I'm saying, but speech turns into action.
It can. That's why we say fire in a courthouse or say a movie theater. Not that movie theaters even exist anymore. They'll probably be reduced to rubble at some point because we're never going to be able to go back to the theater again.
There's a whole thing about how Trolls has, like, completely leveled the playing field for, like, at-home streaming for new releases and stuff, and how it's going to be the death of the movie theater, but we're not here to talk about that right now.
Well, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater anymore. Is the point. But theaters don't exist, so you just can't yell fire and burn. You can't burn a cross on someone's lawn. That's hate speech, right? And so that could lead to action. And so, but we've been very careful. So the Westboro Baptist Church, they would protest the funerals of U.S. soldiers with very offensive signs such as "God hates fags," these types of things. They went all the way to the highest court, and it wasn't even a question. I think it was like a 9-0 ruling. They absolutely have the right to do that. And as upsetting as that might make people, when it comes to public speech, if you're in the square standing on a box, you're allowed to do that. And I think there is something beautiful about that. You know, but I think when it gets misused, we get angry. And we're like, how can they do that? How can they say such horrible things and then these ideas are able to persist? Again, I'm still fascinated that this idea of oppression persists to this day. And that's the thing I can't wrap my head around, is that why do we hate each other? I'm a dark person, you're a light-colored person. We don't seem to have any issues. Why is that?
Because we're reasonable people, that we're not... I mean, a lot of it, I think, comes back to the environment that people were raised into and the experiences that everybody has. Everybody's living a different life, obviously. And some people were raised by people that just lived in a different era where this kind of thing was the norm. And to them, it just might not click in the way that it does. And that's what we're hoping this dialogue will maybe make some gears turn. Maybe you'll click into a different gear here. Maybe something will shift.
Now, you grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened in Erie? Erie was on lockdown last night? What exactly happened there?
Yeah, there was a state of emergency. So I was actually out driving, and I saw a large caravan of people walking, cars and everything heading towards downtown. Now, I guess earlier in the day there had been peaceful protests. I didn't know any of this was going on. I had zero clue any of this was going on in the city. So there were peaceful protests at the courthouse earlier in the day.
Oh, you're on the Facebook group of the Black Lives Matter local antique group of Pennsylvania?
No, I just typically get my dialogue, through social connections, or my information through social connections. Anyway.
Were they down there where the Sugar Ray concert was, as I recall? Is that like the area?
Well, that's actually where things got heated, yes. So,
okay.
So you remember the public square, Perry Square?
Yes. There were statues that commemorated the North during the Civil War, not the South. There wasn't any.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
And so the square is obviously divided by the main street. So there's actually two squares, I guess, on either side, but it's just one big area referred to as Perry Square. Anyway,
right.
The south side of it, I guess the southwest side of it, is flanked by the police station. The courthouse is down to the west of it, And if you were to head north down the main street, you would head towards the Bicentennial Tower, which is the red and white tower that is usually featured, on any tourism post for Erie. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage for you a little bit. People were gathered in the police station parking lot, spraying various graffiti on the side of the building, this, that, and the other. I don't believe anybody broke any windows or anything like that. At one point, a couple of, older gentlemen asked the crowd to move to the square. And so the majority of them did so peacefully because they weren't accomplishing anything, at the police station. And, that was basically the long and the short of it. So as they moved to the square, police began to exit the building via the rooftop. And this began to more or less incite the crowd because, people were outside expecting something to be said, and then when they walk away, you're going to come out and, it almost seemed like a moment of cowardice. So the crowd basically more or less turned around and came back. They were up top trying to communicate something. People really more or less weren't having it. And then they began firing off smoke grenades, tear gas, things like that. And the crowd really, wasn't prepared to react to that in any way, shape, or form. Which is what led me to the idea that if you're going to participate in a protest like this, you should be prepared. You should have water. You don't want things to go south, but if they do, you need to be prepared. You don't want to be hurt in these situations. So if you're going to bring a sign or don't know what to put on a sign, how about some instructions on what to do if somebody tosses some tear gas? Cover that thing up with a traffic cone, kick it down a sewer drain, something. Don't just sit there and take it. Cover it with a blanket, whatever.
Right.
So that it doesn't spread. But the crowds here clearly were not prepared or educated for any type of interaction of that nature.
It was their first protest.
Yeah. Erie hasn't protested much, clearly. So
they watched some YouTube videos to prepare.
Yeah, they watched CNN to prepare, and then all hell broke loose. So
my first rodeo.
Yeah, my first protest. # my first protest. Anyway, Jesus. So things got...
And they're on the roof.
Yeah.
How tall is the building?
From the ground to the roof, I'm going to say 15 to 20 feet. So these guys are visible, and, some of the...
A one-story building. Yeah,
some of the grenades, things that they were being... The projectiles that were being shot down were being thrown back up there, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, see, and if people, have gloves and everything and are prepared for that situation, they can handle that. But otherwise, you're going to get burned if you grab that with your bare hands, which is why, you should kick it down a drain where there's water that will diffuse the smoke.
Well, you got to have welding gloves, obviously, and...
Yeah. Well, I mean, like any thick... Yeah. The thicker the gloves, the better. But, I mean, if you're only planning on handling it for a second or two, you got to have, I would suggest something thick winter gloves, not leather gloves, but just something thick that's not going to burn your skin. It's probably going to burn your glove, but that's what you're going to do if you're going to you put yourself in that situation. I'm not suggesting you hurl anything back at anybody, but like I said, cover it, kick it down a drain, whatever. So anyway, from there, like I said, a lot of the crowd dispersed. My eyes, it was hard for me to breathe. There was a lot of, irritation in my eyes and everything.
Sure.
Got back to my car.
Was anybody calling for Uber at this point to try to get out of there?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention really to that at that moment. That's not where my concerns lied. So I got back to my vehicle, and the couple next to me, they had a small cooler with some little chunks of ice and melted water in there. I mean, they had a bunch of beverages and stuff too, but I didn't. They did end up giving me one, but I didn't ask them for it. I just went over and I was like, "You mind if I have a little water to put in my eyes and stuff?" And they did. They poured me some water. It was very cold. It was very refreshing. I felt fine in about 5 or 10 minutes. And they gave me a ginger ale, which helped with the nausea afterwards. So these people, this clearly wasn't their first protest.
Sure. They didn't have that Mountain Dew, though, you like, though, right?
Well, but they brought the ginger ale, which helps with the nausea. These people were prepared. These people weren't fucking... I mean, they had the water, but they also had the ginger ale. They were prepared.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't create a fuss that they didn't have the Mountain Dew you wanted.
No. I could have gone to Sheetz for that. But Sheetz is probably locked down.
It's probably free You just got to go in there and take it.
Yeah, you're probably just
right
going there to take it. Yeah, so after I left is when things began to really dissolve. I actually did see, like, firsthand what happened, and that was not intentional. So I left and I went home, and then I believe I went back out to run an errand, and I was going downtown, not downtown, but I had to go like through downtown. So I went as north as I could because I knew all the action was more focused near the square. And I was coming from the lower west side, so I go over 4th Street, and that's where I notice literally people are just running down the streets, like hurling chairs through windows and storefronts and things like that. And yeah, all hell's breaking. Like, I have a video, and it's very, very, like, you can hear just the glass and everything shattering. At one point, I have to stop taking, well, I put my phone down because there's a woman that's trying to turn up the road that is where all this chaos is ensuing, and my car is kind of in the intersection in her way, and she's like, get out of the way. And I'm like, you don't want to go up there, like, your car is going to get like flipped over or something, like, please do not go up there. And she didn't. She was like, oh my God, like, yeah, and just proceeded straight. Well, no, I mean, no, but it was just interrupted my video. But regardless, it was a rather chaotic situation. And then when I passed back on my way home, there was a line of police. I mean, the police were just everywhere, every intersection, telling people to disperse. They had an armored vehicle of some sort, SWAT teams. Yeah, they were on the megaphone telling people to disperse. At which point I rolled by very, very slowly, directly in front of their line while they're blaring whatever message they're blaring. The Black Eyed Peas song, "Where's the Love?"
It's a great song.
And I got several. I got several head nods from the police, which made me happy. Like, to the beat, because it's got a pretty prominent like head nod beat. Boom, 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 boom.
The music. The music taste of Erie police should not be questioned here.
Dun, 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 dun. What's wrong with the world, mama?
People living like
they ain't got no mamas.
Do they say what's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no. They don't say mama twice, do they? Can they do that?
I think they do it. I think they can. What's wrong with the world, mama? People like living like they ain't got no mamas.
And I think the key thing for me is that we are trying to stop terrorism, but we still have terrorists here living. And so the president yesterday declared Antifa a terrorist organization. I believe the KKK is also classified in the same way. I don't know if he made a speech saying that there's very fine people.
What about the Bloods and the Crips in the CIA?
Well, the CIA is an external organization, and as far as I know, they go and commit acts of terrorism externally, although I have heard through the Freedom of Information Act, kind of in the 70s, that they did have counter operations here in the United States. But again, focused on left-leaning groups, any types of organization of minorities, then they quickly put an end to this type of activity. They did not want people to organize. And what you see is, it's one thing with Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King's is getting memed right now heavily, but they didn't kill him until he started talking about socioeconomic status. They like the race stuff, they were like, yeah, that's fine. But as soon as he started criticizing the Vietnam War and social power systems, they were like, all right, this guy's got to go. And that's what they don't want. They don't want us to organize around their wealth. And ultimately, I think that's what the power is about. I think if you follow the money, you have a better idea. I just don't think they want everybody to be equal.
So this is where the term "eat the rich" comes in, huh?
I don't know what to make of this. I'm still fascinated by ginger ale story. But it's like, what's going on in Erie? That is there oppression by police in Erie, Pennsylvania?
100%.
Have you experienced this personally?
Yes.
Okay. And can you be objective enough to to believe that maybe you were doing something wrong, or were you completely in the right and someone else was just power hungry?
I reported a head-on collision between two vehicles, where both drivers were seriously injured and needed to be taken, to the emergency room. And upon the police arrival, they basically more or less, they didn't even ask us who we were. They just told us to get the fuck off their crime scene.
Okay.
That's just a more recent example. I'm not going to sit here and list. Yeah.
And abrupt.
Yeah. Next time I just won't call you and I'll let these people die. Is that what you fucking want? Like, I don't, what? Jesus fucking Christ. I thought I had to file a report or something as a witness.
I think the aggressive, heavy-handed approach by people who are what should be classified as public servants. But they seem to be above that. Like they seem to loom larger than a sanitation worker or someone who maybe works in the sewer system. But I don't. My garbage man never told me to get the fuck, or insulted me for maybe putting recycled items in the trash or vice versa. Yard clippings in the recycle bin.
Yeah, it's almost like wielding a gun makes you fucking power hungry or something.
So that's it. When you bring up this power hungry, I think of the psychological experiment done by Stanley Milgram, who grew up in Brooklyn, and he was a Jewish faith, and he was fascinated by what happened in World War II Germany with the Nazis, and he wanted, everybody just kept saying, no, that's World War II. That only happened there. That's Nazis. That's very specific. But he came up with the shock experiment where if someone couldn't repeat or memorize words correctly, they were given a bolt, a shock, and they were told to keep doing it. And so people were brought in and just told, hey, you have to shock this person. And they could hear them screaming in the other room. It was an actor, of course, but they didn't know that. And people still willingly hit the button. So I think that says about us as humans is that we just don't really care for each other. And I hate this because people will say this is the natural human condition, and I disagree. I think we can evolve. I think we can learn that violence is not the answer. This is a learned trait, just as racism is a learned trait. You're not born angry. You're not born violent. You're not born racist. You're taught these things. And one of the better pop culture examples I can give of this is the Jackie Robinson 42 movie, and there's a young man who he's around adults who are screaming terrible things, and then he joins in. So a lot of this behavior is learned, and we have to just re-educate everybody. How we do that requires an entire revamping of our education system, and that is something, again, we just don't have an appetite to do in this culture. We don't have an appetite to do anything, honestly, except eat more hydrogenated foods, and you just get fat and fat.
No, it's true, and I agree with everything that you said, and I'm actually glad that you directed that into the direction of the human condition and everything like that. The only point that I'm going to maybe slightly, not necessarily disagree, but come at from a different angle, is the point of violence, because it seems to be that seems to be a universal trait almost no matter where you go. And that does seem like a human trait that we're not to say that we can't, we're trying to learn to adapt, but we need to recognize that we are not as far along the evolutionary scales we like to think. We're not as far out of the woods as we think. And
are you saying boys will be boys?
No. I'm saying that we need, like, it's something that is still kind of somewhat written in our DNA, and trying to use our advanced intelligence to try to basically forcibly evolve and shake those violent tendencies is difficult for humans as organisms. I believe. You know what I'm saying?
Were you taught?
But it's nurture. It's a mixture of nurture and nature. Okay, I'm saying that we're inherently violent beings, and we continue to repeat that, which then passes it on through our next generations. But everybody's. I challenge anybody listening to tell me that they've never had a moment in their life where they were just so angry that they wanted to smack somebody, across their face.
Right, because again, I think it's a learned thing. I knew violence was wrong, but I was taught by my father that it was okay to fight. But he wanted me to stand up for myself. He didn't want me to be bullied, and as a result, I ended up actually being a bully in some instances. Sometimes I was standing up against the bullies. It varies at different moments in my life. But were you taught at a young age to be violent, or were you told?
I wasn't taught anything.
you were just running wild, naked.
Basically. Yeah. I just learned through the experiences in my family, which obviously were violent as well. So, but I tried to not. What'd you say?
What age did you start playing hockey, a violent sport?
5 or 6.
And you were taught that it was okay to hit?
You weren't permitted to hit until the later ages, more around puberty.
Okay. How old was your first fight?
Oh, well, before that, probably.
Okay.
And yeah, so
I watched a lot of wrestling, and when I was 8 years old, I pummeled a kid with an elbow to the gut.
Yeah.
And I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
But he started crying, and the teacher started yelling, and that's when I realized I had done something wrong. But I was just mimicking the behavior of Macho Man Randy Savage. I was eating Slim Jims and Slim Jim in one hand and an elbow in the
other. With the Slim Jim in the one hand.
I was susceptible. I was completely oblivious. An open canvas. And you just absorb the culture.
Yes, I agree. And
my parents instilled it in me, but everything I saw on television, in films, I grew up watching.
We definitely need a re-education. That's for sure. We saw that. We've been exposed to, yeah.
Except on PBS. That was different. I never saw Big Bird take a swing at anybody.
No, yeah, I think they were pretty good at conflict resolution there on Sesame Street, down on the streets.
Very diverse neighborhood. You did have an angry homeless person, but again,
he was homeless. And that's exactly, they hit the nail right on the head. I mean, if we're going back to the comments on socioeconomic status, what do you expect them to be happy that they're homeless? I mean, it's a little frustrating.
And I think the poor, the working poor, have every right to be angry because you can work 40, 50 hours a week and still be poor. And I don't think people understand that. They assume that every economy is the same, city to city, and that if you live in Phoenix versus Erie, that all the opportunities are the same. Whereas I know in rural Arizona, there are few and far jobs in between, and the only jobs you have are McDonald's and Walmart. And if they're not paying a higher minimum wage, it is difficult to survive. I just don't. God, we lack so much context in all of it. And I don't know why we're so hesitant to challenge authority when abuse is rightfully happening.
Well, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see people not fear the challenge anymore.
That's what blows me away, Terry. What would it take for you to go out and get tear gas and potentially shot?
What's happening right now? I went out last night. I'm not going to destroy, vandalize, or do anything else, but I mean, I'm not, if you're going to shoot me for holding up a sign that says enough is enough, then you can take that up with your God or your whoever.
You were holding up a sign?
Well, I didn't take one, but when tear gas started flying, people were dropping stuff, and there was just one along the road, and so I considered it a donation and held it up on the front lawns.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm hoping that the sign owner would be, happy that it was being displayed still and not just rolling around on the ground.
I've always played this devil's advocate role in my class, and I tell the students, I'm like, I have a very comfortable life. Like, what makes you think I need to go down? It's very hot right now in Arizona. It's over 110 degrees right now. We have a heat advisory warning. And there are people down at the state capitol fighting with police, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm gonna hang out here in the air conditioning. I'll share a few Facebook articles, maybe sign a petition or two. But that's it. I'm not willing to get gassed. I'm not willing to get beaten. My life, I'm pretty privileged. Why would I put my health and safety at risk for others? Do I care enough about the other? And I'm saying that in the larger context of COVID. If I really cared about the other, then I would want to stop the spread. I would want to wear a mask. If I really cared about the other, I would be on the front lines. But do I care enough? And then I guess to listeners, do you actually give a shit enough to where you're willing to lay it all on the line and go hang out at your state capitol like they did in Madison, Wisconsin, and protest for multiple days on end for the purposes of securing liberty and justice for all? And I think we've become complacent, and I would admit that I'm part of that. I have a pretty good life. Not everybody's living that way, but it's not happening in my backyard directly. So why am I going to go out and risk my life? Is
First,
that wrong?
they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then
Right.
they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Truer words have never been spoken.
That
I
is
just
why.
gotta tell you-
That is why you need to go out.
And the reality is I understand the importance of bodies in the streets matter. Like, you get numbers influence change. Like, you have all these people demanding that the government be opened, and the government's open. Albeit we're seeing now spikes in coronavirus cases again, so that's another travesty waiting to happen. But I always find these people come out. This isn't the first time people have rioted, right?
Nope.
This happens frequently throughout history.
Yep.
And people always like to pretend it's not happening or they're not peaceful, right?
Yep.
I guess, why aren't we listening? Why aren't we changing? And to me, that's more of going after the power structure. We need more people to run for office. We need more people to register to vote. That frustrates me to no end. You need to put more people in office who think like you and are willing to hold authority accountable. Because the reality is that the other side is completely organized.
Yes.
They're writing the book. So we're following their blueprint, and it's difficult to beat them at a game that they're consistently changing the rules on. At what point do we say stop?
Well, you're beginning to see it. And while many disagree with rioting and destruction of property and things like that, myself included, I don't think that anything should be destroyed. I don't want to see things destroyed. The underlying.
If you hit a Walmart, I wouldn't care as much.
Yeah, that's true. Why aren't people marching on Walmart? That is true, because it's far. They don't put themselves right in the thick of it like that.
If they hit a Hobby Lobby, so be it.
The underlying idea is profound, and people that don't understand it, I believe, are kind of missing the concept. Is they're destroying things that can be replaced, and most oftentimes, are covered by insurance. Let me give you one. Let me give you an example here, because we're talking about destruction of property versus destruction of a life. So let me just give you an example. We have a local coffee shop that was opened a couple of years ago on the corner of 4th and State, and there was this big article about the woman leaving her job, I believe in IT. I don't want to misquote the story, but I believe she was an IT professional of some sort and decided she wanted to run her own business. So she opened up a coffee shop named Ember and Forge on the corner of 4th and State in Erie, Pennsylvania. Now, as I described to you last night, where the events were taking place, that means it was right in the wheelhouse of all this chaos and destruction. So they actually had their windows broken out, and somebody threw some sort of fire grenade inside, and it caused a fire. Don't believe it was a structural fire. I believe it was a small fire, but nonetheless a fire still. And as of 3 hours ago, on the Ember and Forge Facebook page, Ember and Forge was built to be a welcoming space for our Erie community. While yesterday's events have left us hurting, it pales in comparison to the grief in our Black community. We stand in firm belief that the Erie community is strong and has a bright future, But this future only happens when all of our citizens are heard. We are assessing the damage and cleaning up and will be closed on Monday. That's it. And then they'll be back open because they recognize that windows can be replaced, lives cannot.
This is true. Life is precious.
And that's what we're talking about. And that's what we're talking. They want equality with their life. And if you can't empathize, or even if you make it about a window, then you're completely missing the point. These people are worried about being shot while going to get groceries, or for being pulled over for something, for being black, for just the color of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot put yourself in that position, then I mean, respectfully, it's difficult to respect your opinion on the topic. You have to be able to empathize with these people. It's not to justify any of the destruction or anything like that. Nothing like that. But we need to understand that life is more valuable than anything. And attacking the materials of a society that emphasizes material goods over human life is the exact response that you should expect.
So, all of this can be replaced. Lives cannot.
Correct.
I don't know if we actually care about life. Like, I hear arguments. I believe life to be precious, but again, I don't know if we actually give a shit about our fellow human being. I think we're so egotistical and selfish that we literally just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Unless you have a label that might make us care. You know, we would like to attach labels to people, and it makes them more significant.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because I really think you can judge a culture by how we treat those who are the least of us, who are the poorest of our communities.
Correct.
I've heard floats, quoting Gandhi here, misquoting Gandhi, I should say, but how we even treat our animals. You can make these arguments. I have my vegan sister, but I've personally, and maybe it's because I grew up in Arizona, I've experienced racism at multiple levels. I've dealt with law enforcement on multiple levels all around the country, been pulled over all over. And Arizona has actually been decent to me. But I think that's because I am articulate. And so because of that, I've been able to talk my way out of any situation. And I was always taught at an early age through pop culture that I deal with law enforcement and authority in a very specific way. So I was always quick to hold my steering wheel and make my hands visible as possible. I actually roll down the window and I keep my left hand out and my right hand on the steering wheel on the left side, making very clear that my hands I'm not hiding anything. And you know where I learned that from? Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Because my parents didn't teach me any of this stuff.
That was on an episode of The Fresh Prince, correct?
It was, yeah, they got pulled over.
Yeah, Carlton, this is with Carlton, right? And, Will goes, off because he's like, you have no idea, what it's really like and stuff, right?
Right.
Because even Carlton, a black man of privilege, he doesn't quite understand it. So that, again, can comment on the socioeconomic impacts, over race.
It really is. It does come back to status. I know a former Arizona Cardinals defensive end, Darnell Docket, he made millions of dollars playing, just tearing it up in the middle, almost won a Super Bowl with us. Like, he was putting Ben Roethlisberger on his back and helped really lead a strong comeback in that Super Bowl that I don't want to talk about anymore. I'm just going to get upset. But he would have to videotape every interaction because he would get pulled over, and he was in Virginia specifically, I think is where he ended up living. And he would just videotape every interaction because he was always driving a very nice vehicle. And he just started this years ago. And I remember it was only then that I was able to get people to realize that, hey, this is happening to somebody who's not doing anything wrong. They're just being harassed. And I was able to get people who I would say identify more strongly with the oppressor to think, okay, maybe something is wrong.
And that's my current struggle.
Yes.
Is getting others to understand. So hopefully by listening to this dialogue, it will open a new door or avenue of thinking for them?
I think it's for every individual. It's hard to make yourself be self-aware and self-evaluate what exactly is going on in your brain. Why do you think a certain way? Where does it come from? Because as I like to remind you, if you do the Don Miguel Ruiz, the Four Agreements, I think one of the points that I love about that book is that you don't choose your religion. You ultimately, like you said, you're Catholic. You were given Catholicism. Your parents didn't come to you and say, hey, here's the menu of religious options and morality options. You learn this stuff over time. And a lot of this stuff is learned, but we're not teaching morality. We're not teaching ethics. None of this stuff is being taught at a very young age. And I think ultimately education is the solution. And that's why I've pursued a career in that. And that's like my effort to change the world. I'm not out in the front line.
Go on.
But I will be exposing my students to information and arguments that will hopefully help them critically think.
Yeah.
And continue to be the change in the world.
Which is good. And this is one of the reasons why, I mean, I am grateful that, I was raised and given the opportunity to go to a Catholic private school and high school. I believe that there were some morals that were instilled in me through those years. I'm not going to say that everything that I learned through that religion is complete garbage or nonsense. That's absolutely not the case. I learned a lot of very good values, and I believe that has helped shape the moral person that I try to perceive myself as or try to be in, everyday life. Try to be a good person, and I believe a lot of those values were just instilled through me through my experiences in school and, with my peers and other students at that time. And there's just certain elements of the faith, more the human indoctrination parts of it, that I just simply disagreed with, and that's for each individual to decide. But I think I learned a lot of very, very, very good values and moral lessons through that religion and through my opportunity to go to a private Catholic school. So, I mean, I'm not going to, sit here and dog anything like that, but it definitely gave me a unique perspective that I believe a lot of people simply aren't given an opportunity to experience in the current public education system. I mean, by no means am I suggesting that we teach religion, prayer, or any of that in the public education system. I'm, against that. If you want to offer a world religion elective that students can go ahead and take and learn about on their own time, right, as an elective, by all means, that should be available.
I think it can be packaged as morality and ethics. It doesn't have to be religious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're going to make morality about religion, and it's not always that way.
Yeah.
You should be treating others good, turn the other cheek. You can use the United Nations Charter as a structure. There's 30 good ideas right there.
Yeah.
The education component matters. I just finished reading the autobiography of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and he grew up Catholic, and he had a very strong Catholic education, and I think it really helped propel him to where he is now. And so he may have benefited from programs or some affirmative action along the way, but at the very core, he was given opportunities for a good Catholic education by a nun who did not like racism, and they made that very clear. And that's part of his story, and it's a story we don't hear about because, on the liberal side, we don't really care for Clarence Thomas because he just likes to watch pornography and put pubic hairs on Coke cans.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, he's got his own story, and
I know
it's a fascinating.
Yeah,
the education component is so key.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've got firsthand experience, so, and I agree. If there's some way that we have to be able to teach equality and not tolerance. Tolerance is not. We're way past that. It needs to be equality of one another in our schools. So I don't know how you institute that, but it needs to be taught.
I come to the
civics.
realization.
Isn't there like a civics class? We could have civil discourses in those classes. That's where those things should be taught, right?
So that's a school board decision, right? And then even then that's a Department of Education decision. If you're starting locally, for people who are listening, this all happens locally. It starts with your school board, and it starts with your local, state Department of Education, and they set the guidelines. And so you can help develop curriculum. It takes work. I don't know. If you want to go out and throw chairs in the coffee shops, that's one thing. I think it's another thing to go challenge yourself to go get registered voters, get competent people on school boards, because I guarantee you, when it comes to local elections, again, we are losing this battle, and they probably want to keep us distracted. I really credit President Trump for being able to distract us so easily. My God, he just jingles keys, and we just we turn our head. And
oh my God, yeah! I'm so glad that you've commented on this, because my head almost exploded right out of the sunroof the other day when I was driving down Peach Street. There was a sign for some guy. Let me hang on. I have his name here. I have his name. Tom King is running.
Oh yes.
He's running in Tom King is running in 2020. Do you want to know what position he is running for?
This is here in where is this? This is in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Where?
Yes. Okay. He's got signs in Erie, Pennsylvania. Do you want to know what position he is running for? It says vote Tom King 2020, but I'm not going to tell you the position he is.
I have to guess.
Yes. Well, I'll give you one or two guesses before I tell you.
I was going to say comp controller, but I don't know how popular that position is.
All right, one more.
Superintendent of Public Instruction, since we're talking about education.
One more.
If not, President of the United States.
No, he's not running for President of the United States. He is, however... Tom King is, however, running to be a Trump delegate.
Yes, the delegate.
A Trump fucking delegate? What?
Yeah.
I believe I'm not a Republican. I'm just running on the premise of voting on whatever the fuck Trump wants. What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
That is a dangerous fucking world.
Loyal. He has created a culture of loyalty. I'm in Arizona, so we had John McCain and Jeff Flake, and those senators are no longer our U.S. senators, but they stood up to Trump, and they're Republicans, and they were admonished for it. You cannot be critical of this president and survive. You have to ride or die. Even Jeff Sessions is trying to get back in. He's running against Tommy Tuberville, I think the former coach of Auburn or whatever, but you have to pledge your undying loyalty to him as if he is a prophet in order to get the right wing of the base, to get the Rush Limbaugh, to get the Hannity nod, to get all these crackpots that are pushing conspiracy theories, constantly lying, saying things about Joe Scarborough killing people, right? And then
yeah, and
when you correct them, they're like, "Oh, media bias."
Yeah,
no, you're telling lies.
And what is this Newsmax fucking news channel that I'm hearing about? It sounds like some fucking state TV shit.
I think the best analogy I've heard is that Trump is an arsonist. He's literally going out, just spreading fires of misinformation. And when the media goes to put them out and say, no, you're wrong, 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 there is no voter, there's no irregularities when it comes to voting. You're not illegally voting and so forth. And they're correcting every little lie he says, and then they turn around and say, you're being biased. And this guy is a fire starter, and he's causing all these problems. And then they say, oh, you guys aren't treating us fairly, when in fact they're just spreading misinformation. And that's just not okay. If you want to make arguments about smaller government, by all means, do that. But you don't have to lie about birth certificates and shit like this and just take us in the bizarro world.
Yeah, well, that's where we're at now, so.
It really is. And we've always been there. There's a great book called The United States of Paranoia, and it actually cites Samuel Adams, one of our founders and great beer makers, as a conspiracy theorist. He would spread propaganda about the British. And when the Stamp Act was going into effect, people were like, okay, you're going to tax us, but we want to be part of the monarchy. And he turned it the other way. He was like, no, they're going to enslave us. Meanwhile, they're enslaving people anyway during this time period. Of course, and this suspicion continued to grow. And next thing you know, we're having a fucking revolution. And it's built on the backs of paranoia, misinformation, propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
This is not.
And who's profiting from all that? And who is profiting from all that?
Nothing new. Like people talk about, we were talking about news journalism yesterday. Oh, I wish we could go back to the old days where there was no bias. There's always been bias in everything, but it's now more apparent than ever because it's everywhere. Because there's so many videos. Yeah. Same with the Will Smith quote that's also getting disseminated right now about racism didn't go away. It's just being recorded or something to that effect. I'm butchering the quotes here.
Yes, that's okay.
Racism never went away. It's just being recorded.
Yeah, it's just being amplified because everybody can see it now.
And people are amplifying it. I think somebody I got into an argument with, or discussion, not an argument, on Instagram, she's sharing posts from a WWE wrestler who's spreading misinformation. And this guy's got 250,000 followers. I got 28. My tits aren't big enough to freaking get a following, apparently.
Yeah, no, you got to work on that. Well, they have surgery. You can elect for surgery.
But yeah, and
so
we have to find a way to combat the misinformation.
The idea, though, circling back to the question I asked, is who profits from all of this? The people at the top, the ones spreading the misinformation. Because what happened when we started this revolution? We had this revolution. We separated ourselves from Britain, and then what? We needed leaders. We needed people at the top. And who were those people? The ones that were spreading.
And we collapsed, and Russia and China take over.
Well, yeah, but who were the people that we voted into leadership? The ones that were spreading all the disinformation and rah-rahing against Britain. Now they're our fucking leaders.
They really did hate Hillary Clinton, didn't they? Wow.
Right.
But as far as spreading misinformation goes, we're very aware that Russia is still doing this, and they're purposely playing on this civil discourse that we're having now, this civil unrest, and they're purposely also spreading misinformation, and they're playing us like a fiddle, man. And I just wish we'd have more serious policy discussions, but I'm a C-SPAN PBS guy, and so I'm okay with having long, drawn-out, some people would call them boring conversations.
Yeah, and most people can't handle that. They need it done in 5 minutes,
Oh, they have to be yelled at in 140 characters or less, or 8-minute clips going to commercial break. A lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, a lot of talking heads, but no real conversation. Because I would not identify as conservative, but I could make conservative arguments sensibly and logically. And whenever I talk to conservatives, we can talk to each other and be very agreeable.
Yeah.
We all want the same things.
I think most people do.
Yeah. I can't think of anybody that likes pesticides in their food and frickin' steroids. But yet we have an agriculture industry that fights us tooth and nail on this. And they say, oh, you can't label GMO products. So you don't even know if you're eating frankenfoods when it comes to your chicken, cows, or fish or anything. And I'm always amazed by that. Nobody wants nuclear waste in their backyard. But these industries fight tooth and nail to bury waste in fucking Nevada. And people are just like, eh.
Yeah, we should be shooting it into the sun. We should be shooting it into the sun. And that's also what we should be doing with any of our criminals that are on death row. I don't want to get into criminal justice reform or anything like that. But if anybody is worried about us continuing to have to pay for these people to exist or anything like that, or wondering what we should do with all the overwhelming amounts of trash that are piling up around the world or the nuclear waste, we should just pile it all up on a rocket and fire it into the fucking sun. It's just a big incinerator. It's a big incinerator, and it's sitting there waiting for us to just throw our garbage into it. And we're sitting here just burying it in the backyard, like you said. I'm partially joking. Actually, I'm entirely joking about firing criminals into the fucking sun. I just think that in this Trump world that we're living in, and him making a grand spectacle of everything, I think that would just be must-see TV.
Sure. It's not a bad idea. Shoot stuff into the sun.
Right? You know what I'm saying? We're getting into the space game. Like you don't need to fire off a powerful rocket. It just needs to break orbit. You know what I'm saying? It just needs to break orbit, and then it can drift into the sun. It doesn't need to be firing a million miles an hour into the sun. Just get it going, push it off, and then it'll run into it and incinerate, and that's
We
it.
should make time to talk about criminal justice reform. And there was federal legislation that's passed, and Republicans came around on that issue. And it's something that did not get a lot of notoriety. I want to give Kanye and Kim Kardashian here some credit because they were a part of that. And that's what the news media chose to focus on is Kanye's password being 0000 or 1111, forget which one it was, him wearing a MAGA hat and him in the White House, when in reality, criminal justice reform was just passed. And I still to this day, we have not had a serious conversation about what's in that legislation, what happened, what is it about Republicans that made them change about this, because they did come around. And so let's put that one on the docket for future conversations. We'll
Absolutely. Yeah. We can do that. We can do a criminal justice reform. Absolutely. Yeah, because that's going to be a whole different conversation.
But that's part of our conversation today because that's why people are pissed off.
I agree. It contributes, but it's a whole separate packet that it would just in a whole conversation that would occupy just so much time. That we have plenty of time to cover it.
People are angry.
Yes.
I don't think they realize how fucked up the system is because they, again, benefit from being in a privileged position and they don't have to experience any of this.
That's why I mentioned the documentary 13 on Netflix.
So good.
Yep.
There is the Bloods and Crips as well that I think goes well with that. And I believe it's also on Netflix. But,
cool.
It's all about redlining. We're keeping people in a neighborhood. I was always fascinated at how and why they turned against each other because they went from the Black Panthers to fighting each other. So Black Panthers were out to fight the system, even famously bringing guns to the Sacramento state capitol in California, where then Governor Ronald Reagan said, we got to have gun reform because we don't want any of these, we don't want armed black people coming to the Capitol. And that's kind of, you see the rise of the NRA at this point from just being a hunters group to becoming an advocacy group saying if they're going to take guns away from black people, they can take guns away from anybody. And so they become this juggernaut of a lobbying organization, the NRA. It's fascinating history. But the whole notion, again, is what happened? You were fighting the power. There was civil unrest, and all of a sudden one day then it became Bloods versus Crips in a redlined ghetto, purposely intentioned, so you could not leave that neighborhood. And if you did, the police were right there to knock your head around. Again, the LAPD, Bull Connor. This is all good history. I don't know if anybody knows this. Maybe they don't care. But if not, they should start doing their homework.
Well, I mean, it's just the systemic oppression. It's just another example of it. Just put a bunch of people in one area, you basically have them imprisoned. What do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we hit on a lot of good stuff today. I think it's probably a good spot to end things. Don't you still have a rappelling trip to go on today?
Here's what happened. So here's what I did yesterday. So when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Start recording again, roll. So when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, he identifies with me politically as well, but ever since this quarantine happened, he became concerned about his own personal well-being and safety, so he became a gun owner. It's something he grew up around guns. His father was in the military, but he never personally owned guns, and he never really was exposed to them. So he went out and started purchasing firearms, but he's also kind of a collector, so he likes rare or unique things. So he invited me to go to a shooting range here in Mesa, Arizona. Carville's is what it was called. And we go inside, and we take a number. And within a half hour, I had to fill out a waiver. Didn't have to show any ID. And he had all the supplies, and we safely and properly discharged firearms in a shooting range, indoor shooting range. We killed a predator and an armed person, or some type of criminal-looking guy. And then from there...
Why couldn't you just shoot like turkeys or something?
It was a predator target. And you purchased the targets.
Oh, gotcha. So were there no turkey options? Or deer?
There were like zombies. There was like a zombie rat I don't remember a turkey.
Okay, so the only animal available was a rat. Everything else
That's
was
the
human.
only animal that I remember, and it wasn't just any rat. It was a rat that had ingested. It was like Splinter before he became the leader of the Ninja Turtles.
So he was like evolving.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I would take the evolving Splinter over any of the humanoid figures, but go on. So how was it?
No, so then we went to relax. We were going to do brunch, and we ended up at a few breweries in downtown Chandler, Arizona. From there, his quarantine chick, if you will, came, and she had a friend she hadn't seen in years, her childhood best friend, who recently became single. And so her and I met and kind of hit it off. Very easy. She's 29. She has 2 kids, but she's beautiful. Absolutely stunning. And I had no problems hanging out with her. And we just kept going from place to place. And before I knew it, it was 6, 7 p.m. and I didn't know what had happened. But I wanted to make sure that I curbed my drinking. So I drank a latte around 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Big mistake. I do love my lattes. And I could not sleep.
Yeah.
But before I know it, it was 4 a.m. and it was time for me to leave to go on this rappelling trip. And I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to rappel down a 180-foot cliff with zero rest. I thought I could potentially make a mental error. I'm not an avid rappeller.
Yeah, safety first.
I would have a person above and below me, making sure that, if anything happened, they would catch me. Yeah. But I just didn't feel comfortable. So I just canceled the trip. And instead, all of my physical activity there will be golfing. So I don't know if that makes me pompous. Everybody says it's a waste of water and grass, but I find it lovely.
You're allowed to enjoy things like that. I mean, I don't want to get into a whole golf conversation. We can make that a whole separate thing too. There's too many golf courses, but you should be allowed to enjoy your golf if you want to. I just don't think there needs to be as many courses across the country as there is. That is all. I'll keep it that simple for now.
No, of course, yeah. And then, so the long story short, I didn't end up going rappelling because of that. But
that's okay.
I met a new girl. We are friends on Snap and Insta. We've shared a couple videos on Snap since.
There you go.
Which was hilarious because she's doing a video and all of a sudden her kids just come screaming in.
Awesome.
She's been here a week. Her divorce isn't officially. Actually, she is she came from Texas. Her husband was in the military, or is in the military. Mm-hmm. And legally, she has to wait till the divorce is finalized. But because of Corona and COVID, offices aren't open, so it's taking longer than 31 days. And so the office doesn't open until June 1st. So they won't be able to process her divorce, but she left anyway. And that is illegal. That is illegal.
Well, hey.
So she is actually a fugitive.
Sometimes you got to roll the dice, Can't be sitting around beating off.
Otherwise, she would just have to sit in the house with the husband, who she doesn't like. The marriage has been disintegrating for months and years.
Yeah, I think they might be able to appeal that one, if there were any issues to arise.
Just a reminder again of just some of the unfair rules and laws in our culture.
Yep.
If you can imagine someone was being beaten or assaulted or whatever. I mean, again, I part of the oppression, because it's not just minorities. It's really everybody who's not a white male, and I don't want to lump all white men.
Oh, I know.
White males.
Oh, we suck. We're the worst.
Privileged.
We are the worst.
They get full access, and they're going to argue that they're the minority or that they're being oppressed, and I don't see it that way because they dominate and control the wealth.
I will remind you of the song that I played for you when I first met you by Lil Dicky. White dude.
Right?
And in that song he does it, it's all satirical. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's singing about how happy he is to be a white guy, but also pointing out the privilege that he has by being a white guy. You know what I'm saying? And he's not disparaging other races, but just being happy about being a white guy. But it's a commentary on how completely unleveled the playing field is. You know what I'm saying? If you watch it and think like, oh, this guy's a huge asshole and he's rubbing his white privilege on our face, like, you're not giving him his due credit, because it's it's a purposeful commentary.
Yeah, Louis C.K. said the same thing, but he lost his credibility when he started pulling his dick out. So
Yeah. Lil Dicky just sings about his dick sucking. He doesn't. He makes fun of his dick. He doesn't pull it out for people.
Systems, but I understand that white men could, I would say poor white men. Yes, you're probably in the same boat as a lot of other people, but the privilege that exists in this culture was something, again, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and the power that they've been able to build, and that's what you do. It's kind of like a game of Monopoly, honestly.
Yep.
And they're playing to win, and why would you want to give up power? If you have power, why would you give it up?
Yep.
The Rooney Rule exists because of this. That's why I think it's so powerful to see Barack Obama as president, and Hillary Clinton would have been a game changer, but things have changed. Things have changed.
All we can do now is vote, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, drink some ginger ale, and we'll set up another talk soon.
Sounds good. Love ya. Be
All
safe.
Right. Good job.
I'll talk to you later.
Love you.
Love you too.
Be safe.
Bye. And that wraps up the end of our 4th episode. Again, if you enjoyed anything that you heard today, be sure to subscribe and share. And you can interact with us on Twitter at CTS Terry or on Facebook by searching for the Catch the Sky podcast. Thank you again for listening, and remember to keep trying to catch the sky.